I was thinking, I woke up with a couple of emails that were people that things that didn't go as I expected, kind of thing. What happens when things don't go as expected? Some people, I may have disappointed some people by not communicating properly, and they had expectations of certain projects or consistency. And so I was reflecting on that, and obviously when I mess up, I try to recognize if I mess up and I apologize. So there's a thing about apologizing sincerely, and also explaining maybe it's not always one person's fault, because you're trying to, for example, for this project, the podcast and recording and time commitments and budget. And I want to avoid creating false expectations or misunderstandings, because this is it's kind of an adventure, it's a voyage. And right now I'm just using a lot of my personal reserves and savings, but I'm very excited about it and I want to build a team. So that's, yeah, how do you create realistic expectations? Like, hey, I want to do this, I don't know where it's going.
It's not what you expected. So I love this conversation about, like, yeah, what do you do? What do you do when you have an intention and you're excited, but you can't set guarantees in a sense, but yet you need some kind of framework, and then you don't want to set false expectations, but yet you also want to be in that excitement, right? And that's really a trusting place because you have no proof or evidence. So it is a funny thing. And I mean, even if you were a producer of, like, say you've done huge box office movies, right? It still doesn't matter, because every new project is a new, like, crapshoot that you don't know. So that is a really great question. So what do you do to, like, keep that level of excitement? And you can't promise something that you don't know, but yet you also want to build up something.
Yeah. And you want to get the momentum going. So if it's good to plan. I know that if you plan properly, you are more effective, and and people see your vision. But when it's like a startup, I mean, I've had several startups, and I've had people that believe in me and believe in the vision, even if the vision is not like, oh, this is exactly what's going to happen. We're going to be this and this, and it's going to grow like this and stuff. So I think part of it is communication, is saying, look, this is what I hope will happen, and this is why I think it's going to be good, and we build this team and we connect. Oh, to be fair, I think I could have done a better job giving updates and saying, hey, for example, the feature film budget is going to cost twice as what I expected, so I'm putting a hold on that. But I gave them a budget, between I guess I can say it, 100 to 150,000, and now it's going to cost 250 to 300,000. So that's not what I expressed. That's what I'm comfortable with. So
Right.
that puts a hold on the feature film, which I was, I was talking a little bit about it because I have a screenplay. I mean, so you see some results and some investment, and then you see results, right? But then what's the next step after that? So that's an example. I mean, everybody has their own examples. I think that the interesting thing is say, oh, some of it is my fault, and some of it is somebody else thinking over their expectations maybe were not realistic, you know? So without going to the specifics, it's more about just how I feel. So I'm feeling like I feel like I've let maybe somebody down, and that doesn't make me feel good. So I feel, you know, that kind of makes me reflect into I could have maybe given them an update saying my budget is extending. The cost of making those professional videos, for example, were initially around 250 to 300. Now they're costing around 600. So maybe I should have said, hey, I thought this was going to cost around 300 bucks. Now it's going to cost around 600 bucks. So I can't keep doing these videos.
What is that for? What are you talking about now?
Oh, for example, the professional videos, instead of the Zoom videos that we're recording,
right. Mm-hmm.
like bringing the crew and editing and stuff, which they look great, but the budget already, you know, we have a certain amount of videos that we can work with. And now I'm spending money on opening up all these social media platforms. And so, yeah, you just have to manage that, your expenses and your projections, and where you feel like you need to change direction, where you can invest your resources more effectively. So that's what happened. And the other thing is, you know, when we're in your classes, I get so excited when things happen spontaneously. Like in this the last class, you just came up in your head, oh, you're going to be this, you're going to be that, you know, with the other actor, that you came up with these different roles, you know, and just based on what was happening and feedback you were getting from the actors, that, oh, you're going to be this and you're going to be that. And we started having this discussion about religion, for example, you know. And even though we're acting, I start to get like I'm supposed to be a character, but then my own personal biases.
But there is no character. I mean, even if you're playing, you know, a character, there is no character, because it's always going to be you inside there. And that's where actors who aren't willing to do that miss the mark, because then it's just it's like a caricature. But like, yeah, when you start really feeling things and your blood is pumping and like you're like, oh my gosh, or whatever. And that's what was so exciting about that exercise that you guys did.
I'm glad you clarify that, because you keep bringing that up, and sometimes I should know by now, after 10 months.
Well, but look, this is just what connects us into humanity, and that's what's cool, because it's like emotions are the one universal language. Like, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. It doesn't matter what language, religion, whatever, emotion, you know what it looks like. You know what devastation is, you know what anger is, you know what, you know, so like, even if what you guys did in that exercise, because you both began to get really heated and passionate about what you're talking about, and it was very good. If we'd turned it on mute, that'd actually be interesting to like watch it and replay. That I sent you the recording, but to watch it in mute, you can see how you're really listening and responding, and you could tell what they're talking, what you guys were talking. I mean, you wouldn't be able to tell the subject matter, but you would be able to tell the emotional intelligence of the conversation by just watching your behavior. Yeah, and you could tell that if there's agreement and cohesion and stuff, you can tell just, oh, these guys are loving each other, they're in agreement, but you could tell there's definitely something's up. Right. Or like, if you ever hear, like, you see somebody in the car next to you at the stoplight, and so you can't hear them, but they're like on the phone and they're just like, you know, like this, you're like, okay, they're not like telling somebody they love them, right? Yeah. Yeah. You can tell a lot. Yeah. But okay, so there's that, there's my, it's such an enlightening situation, because it helps me, again, talking about communication, you know, how important it is
sometimes it's not even what you're saying, but how you're saying it.
Always.
Always, it is more important how you say
Always.
something. Yeah, but then you let your emotions, it starts triggering you too, and then your emotions are starting to take over. And it was interesting, like one of the things she said was, "Why are you criticizing me?" And I go, "Oh, that's the same reaction that my friends are having. Like they're taking it like I'm criticizing them." And this actor starts to say, "Are you criticizing me?" And I go, "Well, I didn't criticize you. I'm just criticizing maybe the critical thinking part. Like, why do you believe in something just because you were born under this type of religion, and then you say, oh, this is the right religion type of thing, right? And if you're born a Jew or born a Muslim or born a Christian, or I'm meeting people like Jehovah Witness, Church of Latter-day Saints, Greek Orthodox, Scientology. I mean, I've did a little bit of research. There's thousands of religions, and they all in the world, right? And they all believe they're the right one.
Well, it's interesting because I mean, for me personally, that's what I always had trouble with. Like for me personally, I've always had like a relationship with God. To me, it's everything. It's like God is not a man in the clouds. God is like everything, the air, the trees, the flower, you, me, like it's in everything. It's like the massive creator that it's science, because it's everything that's in this world is science, so it's also very scientific. It's just whatever created the plant, is all connected. That's what I think. But I didn't get there initially. I always felt that, but I didn't know how to name it. So I did my own research. I mean, I was brought to like some different churches as a kid, but we weren't like every Sunday we go to this church, like we went. My sister branched off and like really became very religious, like on her own as a teenager. I mean, she began, her own thing, which was great for her. But in my own spiritual journey, that was what you're talking about. And I was like, I made it a mission to go to as many churches as I could. And I did, minus like Scientology, but I knew some friends in California who were Scientologists. So I talked to people. But anyway, my point is they all pointed back to what you're talking about. And even Buddhists, and I mean, I've studied so many different religions, and they would all point back to ultimately we're right and they're wrong. And I was like, but this is where I have a trouble with it, because how could the massive creator who created all the trees and everything be like, oh, you guys got it right, but close call, Catholics, but no, you missed the mark, like going to hell. And I'm like, I can't buy into that. So there is something, there is like a peace movement, which is, it's not a religion, but it's like it weaves together all the faiths. It's called Science of Mind. It's not Scientology. It's called Science of Mind, where it has a universal truth that weaves through all the religions, which really comes back to like love, right? But anyway, that's my own belief. And when I found that, I was like, oh, cool. That's neat that it could be all of the religions, like it's like celebrates Jewish, Muslim, Christianity. It brings together the one thing that's in common with all of them. And let's go of the sort of.
Well, that's exactly how I don't believe in God, but I do believe in finding that common thread. What is the part of religions that can be that is about love, it's about forgiveness, it's about uniting humanity and finding the humanity in all of us, and not getting into the story of who Jesus was, who Moses was, who Muhammad was, who Buddha was. We start focusing on the person, like the story of Buddha and
Right.
And the story of Jesus and stuff. What is the message? The message was of love,
Exactly.
forgiveness, acceptance, inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so they talk about that. Oh, this, I have a loving God. And then they go to war and kill the other guy because, oh, you don't believe in my story, so I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
And then when I had this conversation with, again, with the Jehovah Witness, it starts to get heated because they come with this story. We come with a, no, but this is what happened in 2,000 years ago. You know, it was a virgin and had, you know, like, is that really important? What's important is the message.
Mhm.
So don't get caught up in that. The three, you know, these are stories. These are stories that if people get attached to that story, like it's supposed to be so important. I go,
Right.
that's not. If God is the universe and He's everything, which by the way, He would also be COVID, and He would also be earthquakes and all the destruction that's happening. So you know, when people say, "Oh, God is everything," it's the sun, it's the moon, it's the plants. Yeah, but it's also all the other stuff that's killing and hurting people and making them. So that's something to reflect upon. Why would there be somebody that does all that suffering?
Well, that's a huge conversation, you know, and I mean, I have my
Yeah.
views, but
Well, okay, so we'll leave that for some.
yeah, that's another,
It's gonna,
that's a
it's
good
gonna come.
conversation. That's a big one.
Yeah, but I like the idea with this acting and writing, and my approach is describing the feeling. Because really, if you think about it, the people choose a certain religion, certain church, it's more of a feeling. It's
Yeah.
not facts. There's no, I was talking to this 80-year-old mother of one of the writers, and you know, she's giving me advice about how to love my son, you know, and she's saying, well, love the person, but don't love the behavior. I go, yeah, like, what's wrong with the behavior of a gay person? You know, that's the way they. So there's this judgment and bias. Now they're saying there's something wrong with your behavior for LGBTQ, and that's, if there's a God, they have.
And that's, I mean, that's where I differ from a lot of religions or like dogma, because I don't believe in like a punishing God. That would be like, this is the way, you know what I mean? To me, God is love. So, you know what I mean? Love doesn't do that. Love is just like, even if you were in your challenge, even if you were like a crackhead, it's like, well, you're experiencing this human, I'm just still going to love you. That's where I think it's like the sun, because the sun shines on good and evil. It doesn't discriminate. It's just there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's not like I'm going to pick and choose who I'm going to shine on if you do what I want you to do. I personally don't think that. You know, so that's where like I differ from a lot of like religious dogmas where they're like, it's a punishing, if you're gay, you're going to hell, or if you're this or you're that. I don't think that. I don't even think there's a hell. So that's a whole, I think we create
Yeah.
hell. We create hell in our own mind.
I mean, nobody has shown me where, you know, what hell looks like. You know, take your iPhone, show me, send me a text, you know, what hell looks
Show
like.
you hell that people create. I'll show you that. We see
Yeah.
that every day. I think people create hell.
But it's so much easier to talk to you about it than it was for some of these people that they lock on to a certain church or religion, and they don't want to even question it. You know, it's like, oh, my whole identity, my whole personality is based on this belief, and they're not. And they do talk about the love,
Right.
but when you look at, okay, did you analyze what some of the things that your church says about LGBTQ or about other religions or about nationalities? You know, it becomes nationalized, politicized,
Yeah.
becomes racist. There's a lot of Christians, loving Christians that
Well,
think
I
there's.
mean, my sister, I mean, and it's like, my sister is one of the most loving people you'll ever meet in your life. I mean, she would give you the shirt off of her back. She's not like a judgmental, she's wonderful. And she comes from a more fundamental Christian, like we differ a little bit in our beliefs. You know, she's much more like Bible based. Where I go, I don't really know the Bible that well, but like the stories that I know, I go, those are really interesting spiritual stories. And I think the story of Jesus as a spiritual teacher is interesting. anyway, but we differ from like certain dogma things. When I first started practicing yoga, and I wasn't even doing it at a yoga studio. This is like 20 years ago. I started at 24-hour fitness. Like it couldn't be more dry. Like, it was like almost like it was a yoga class, and I had a great teacher. I was lucky actually, but it was gym yoga. You know what I mean? Like they weren't bringing spirituality into it at all. My sister was very scared. She was like, you shouldn't practice yoga. And I'm like,
Yes.
why? I was like,
There are religious people that see yoga as the devil or something,
yeah,
or,
I know,
yeah.
like my business, even because I have the symbol, some people have criticized me. They're like, why? Because I have the Om symbol, which is like, it can, Hindu, and like Om is like the sound of the universe. It's like everything. But, some people are like, well, why don't you have a cross? Like, what do you say? Like, why don't you have a cross or G, you know what I mean? I'm like, well, and I'm changing my branding anyway, but because I think of it differently. So it is an interesting conversation to have. It's like it does trigger people very, very much.
It's so hard. Yeah. These
I
are the
lost
topics.
a friend, actually. I mean, I don't think of it like lost. We evolved in different ways, but like a high school friend of mine who was amazing, she became Jehovah's Witness, and she judged me because of listening to music. She didn't even listen to music anymore that wasn't like approved by Jehovah. I don't know. Like she thought it was, and she used to be like a dancer. She was a cheerleader in my high school. Like she was like a good dancer. And she was like, no, that's devil music and like nothing.
Yeah.
And that was one of her conversations. She was like mad that I listened to music. That was one of the last conversations we had. She's like, do you still listen to music and stuff? I'm like, what? I mean, yeah.
Imagine life without music, without dancing, even different varieties of food. This is what makes life more the spice of life and the joy of life. And if you just stick to the funny thing about religion is there's always somebody on the top, and there's always somebody taking money and people go to the church and they pay money, and then you have mega millionaires, people giving 10% of the little they have because they don't have much, but that they just want to go to heaven. They're so scared of death. They're so scared of the afterlife. When I go, I have.
But that's not everybody. You can't make a blanket statement because that's not everyone. And there is something about, because like you look at it from a business standpoint, right? Like it's a nonprofit essentially is what it is. And yeah, there are people, of course, in any field who take advantage, right? Like they take advantage and they prey on people's fears. And it's like, this is how you're going to get to the gates of heaven. And then there's this other like paradigm where just like with any nonprofit, it's like you want to give to that because it's giving back to the community. So there are some churches that, of course, they're still operating like a nonprofit, but people are giving not out of fear of death, but out of like, I want to keep giving to this service that's giving to me because it costs money to put on a product of any, you know what I mean? Church services, I'm kind of amazed from like a theater standpoint. It's like a production every Sunday for free, and it's like you're putting on a whole production. So costs money, you know what I mean, from a business standpoint.
Yeah, no, that's a valid point. Of course, it gets, the Vatican has billions of dollars, and they have mafia money, they have corrupt money. And they cover up for all those sexual abuses.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start seeing documentaries. There's a case of Jehovah's Witnesses, and there's a case of sexual abuse and the cover-ups and things like that. But
actually, a guy we might want to have on one time, I just thought of this, is a student of mine a few years back. He's very open about this, so I can share because he has his own podcast, so it might be good for us too, because he changed his whole life. He was like a advisor to Fortune 500 companies and traveled the world and did all this stuff. And he had a nervous breakdown because he was abused by a Catholic priest when he was a kid for years. And him and everybody at the school, and pretty much everybody. And so when he had like this nervous breakdown, when he's like, I can't keep hiding this. This is like hurting my relationships as an adult man. And like, he was just so disgusted. He's like, I'm finally going to face it. And so he developed an organization called Me Too, What Now? He's like, you know, where it's like, yeah, me too, but what now? Like, what do we do with that? You know, like, yeah, I was abused. And he actually has a huge lawsuit against a Catholic church, I think in Maryland, but he's like going around the country interviewing people who've been, and you'd be like freaking amazed, like some of these men that are just, I mean, you just would never imagine, you know, and just letting go of the shame around it so that they can move on and heal from that. It's really powerful, but yeah.
And it's not just the Catholic priest. Maybe the Catholic priest just had a lot more exposure, maybe a lot more cases.
I guess it's like 30, his particular case is like 30 guys, 30 boys from the age of like 8 to 12.
Imagine being a parent and trusting a priest and letting your kid spend private time with this priest, thinking it's going to help them, and they're actually ruining. So that's, there's that part. There's the ugly side. There's kind of the exclusivity. Like, you guys need to be in our church. We're the ones that are the right church. We're the ones that follow the truth. Everybody else is everybody. Like, if there are 3,999 are wrong, and we're the one that's the correct one. Oh, really? So, but again, I want to reflect in how to communicate, because the message we want is to improve communication and self-confidence. And self-confidence, we're tying it to being vulnerable, to being authentic.
But that's the thing I think about Jesus's spiritual stories, from what I know. I'm not going to pretend that I know all about the Bible, right? But like, from the spiritual stories I know about Jesus, it's like he sat with everybody. He would talk and sit with everyone. It wasn't like, oh, you're this, I'm not going to talk to you. It's like poor people, rich people, all different religions. And it's like that, I think, when we get to the message of like, yeah, what do I want to do? Ultimately, I want to learn how to sit with anybody. I mean, Ram Dass, who went and did the acid trip test with Timothy Leary back in the day. And then he like changed his whole life and became a monk and like followed this guru in India and all this stuff. And he was sitting with this guru Maharaja, and he's like, what's the key to life? And he said, love everyone. And he's like, love everyone. I mean, come on. I mean, there has to be some exceptions, right? Murderers, this and that. And he's like, yeah, but love everyone, because love didn't create that. Love didn't create the murderer, it's like, so love everyone. And that's a hard thing to do, especially when you're triggered by somebody's beliefs, especially, I mean, imagine talking to like a satanic cult or something. I mean, it's like I have a friend who helps with a nonprofit who saves those kids from these satanic cults who were literally born to be product for that cult and stuff like that. And I go, how in the heck can you love somebody like that and listen to their beliefs? I'm not there. I'm not there. But it is
I think the message of love is that don't let that hate and suffering overwhelm us, that we still believe in love. Like, some people stop believing in life, believing that life is good, that they lose hope. But because they see so much evil in it, and some of them are so sensitive, it affects them so much. They go, we're destroying the planet, we're killing each other, we're they just see the evil side or the pain side, and we counter that with people that, hey, we have tools to counter that. And it's love, it's understanding how to communicate among each other when we have different views. And I'm still working on that. That's why
it's hard, because see, like in myself, and those are extreme examples, right, of people that, like, of course, well, but the minute we make exceptions, like, well, I can hate them though, but then that's hate. Like, hate is hate, and that is where the work is. It's like, oh my God, like, how can I return to love when it's somebody who triggers me so deeply? Their beliefs are so, in my opinion, wrong, dangerous, whatever it is, because you could, bring that to less extreme things, and people ultimately think that. I mean, look at the political landscape right now, like how we demonize people. And then we're not even talking about Satan worshipers. You know what I mean? We're talking about, just simple choices that people are making. And
yeah. And then this thing about religions or conservative views, they talk about family, right? And and I realize you don't have to be a conservative or religious to believe in family. You can just believe in family. You don't have to believe in the stories that your church is saying, that because they put in some things that are good, and then they add all this other stuff that's just divisive. And I want to, like you said, this science something that they're trying to find what are the important values that unite us, like family, friendship, your health, all these things that are good, and taking care of the environment, taking care of, those are things that help the humanity, help the human species, instead of dividing us, or blaming the other person, or things like that. But again, going back, because there are people who are experts who study religion, study the Bible all their life, and I can't kind of not compete, but I don't know if I can have a educated discussion with them, because they're just going to say, well, this was written here, this was written there, blah blah. So
it's true. I think people who study like world religion, it's fascinating, really, because it's like, wow, if you really have like taken the time to study world religions, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And the conversation where the Greek Orthodox saying that the Bible, the New Testament, was written in Greek, and so I didn't know that. I mean, it's not. I know it was during that time,
right?
But I would have to spend years to analyze really who wrote it, when it was written, what language it was. But does that make sense for me to dedicate all my life to something that I feel like it was written by men? It was written by.
Well, it's all man-made though. Like ultimately it's all man-made, right? Like it's all somebody's story, all of it. And so it's like, again, to me, it gets down to like what the root belief is. And this is just human nature. It's like people want to belong. Why do people get involved in gangs? It's like safety, belonging, it's like, why do they get involved in cults? What's the difference between a religion and a cult? What's the, you know what I mean? It's like, this is all very interesting to me. And I think the baseline is people want to feel a sense of belonging and a sense of safety. Yeah. Like this belief makes me feel safe and I belong to something.
Yeah, safety. Yeah. When you're part of a group, you don't feel alone. You feel it's, like a pack, like a wolf pack or something. If one of them gets left behind, they don't survive. So it's a survival thing. Feel part of it. And my hope is that we evolve, and we start looking at really what connects us on a bigger scale than just a certain church, or even like a football team, a party, political party. People, once they get into this group, the other people are enemies. And it doesn't matter if your leaders are lying, cheating, stealing, you don't want to be, you want to stay in that group.
Well, look at Scientology. Have you watched that documentary?
Yeah, yeah,
It's like, wow. I mean, if that's true, like you made kids like scrub the floor with their tongue and stuff like that, and you're like, you're fine with this? Like, because I mean,
yeah.
I went to I was in school with a guy who was a Scientologist. He was very defensive. And we were scene partners. He's like, I think you're really close-minded. I think you've been programmed, Leah, by society and this and that. And I was like, wow. I mean, you know, so yeah, it's like, I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. And that church
Wow.
is still going, even with those big documentaries out exposing stuff, they're like stronger than ever. I heard that the Church of Scientology is like stronger than ever right now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And they're taking, again, they're taking their money, they're brainwashing, and not just, I mean, most of them are like that. But from that exercise we did, which again, these are such unusual, since I got into this just recently, the fact that we can have this discussion, that we can have these conversations kind of in a safety way, because we are kind of taking roles. It's very liberating, because I won't be able to have that conversation in my job, in my business, because then people can say, oh, you know, I don't get a promotion because of my religious views, or I get fired because of my religious views. So you can never even bring up religion in a normal business setting. But here, whatever, you know, you can talk about religion, you can talk about race, you can talk about sex, all the stuff that you cannot bring up as me as a business owner. I avoid those topics, you know, because there's really a high risk of having legal issues come up. But then that I feel like you're not really connecting to people, because you're avoiding things that are really important for them.
Right, exactly. I know that. I always think about that too. It's like, yeah, that's so interesting. Like, what are we supposed to talk about then? You know, like I had a friend one time say that to me. She was like, I don't want to talk about dating or politics, religion. And it's like, well, but then you're like surface. I don't know. It's just like all these rules about like what we can and can't discuss.
Wow.
So we're really not friends anymore, because it's just too hard. It's like, we can't just disagree and have respect and like learn about it or whatever. Cause like, otherwise you're walking on eggshells. And what is the relationship then?
You know, I really like that, because I did have a clash with this, like these people that I respect, I admire, I love them. But I have to be careful what comes. I mean, we all have to be careful. Like I don't mean to disrespect somebody or attack them, and
Right.
and that's not what I do. You know, I don't want to attack them and judge them, but I speak my mind. I speak what's important for me, which challenges their beliefs.
Mhm.
But if we can relate, like if I can be myself and express the things that I care about, and I just have to be careful. I can't talk about this or this or this, because it's gonna, then the friendship, it becomes too managed and too, oh, we'll only talk about the things you like.
Right. When you never
And
know when you're gonna upset somebody. Like, I think we talked about this last time, but I read a really cool meme that was like, it's not we shouldn't be focused about not triggering people. That's not growth. Like when we're like trigger warning or like this or that, growth and evolving is allowing ourselves to be triggered and to work through that. So if like we're in a friendship or something where you're never allowing yourself to be triggered, like, well, then we can't grow. Like things are going to happen. I mean, I'm triggered. It's what you do with that trigger. It's what you do with it. That's where the growth is. I mean, I'm triggered by my own daughter. You know, I mean, there are times where I'm just like, oh my gosh, you're driving me. I love her more than anything on the planet. And yet I'm a human being. And there's times where you just lose your temper or something. And I'm like, whoa, there's my work. there's my work, because I just got triggered by a 5-year-old. So of course I'm going to be triggered by an adult. You know what I mean? And so instead of us being so delicate with everybody, not that you're going out of your way to bother someone or to be rude or disrespectful, but yeah, if we can't even share our view, then we're never going to grow. We will not grow.
I want this to be enlightening, you know, and educational and inspiring, the things we talked about, in terms of that role playing, because we did a little bit, it was spontaneous, and we did that in one of your classes, and I felt all these triggers, right? And I didn't, and even though I definitely see more an evolution inside me, more maturity. I would be triggered easier before. I would get more defensive, or maybe I would get mad. I wasn't, but I still haven't mastered it, you know?
Right.
And then you kind of want to go back. I should have said this. I should have said that. I should have. And maybe we can, because if we share this with our viewers or whoever is interested by this, I think they can pick up on it and go, oh, you know what? I was in a similar situation about a conservative and a progressive. And sometimes now you have parents who could be progressive or Democrats with kids, yeah, Republican, or Republican parents with that. And some of them stop talking.
Right.
You know, it becomes, they cannot pass that barrier where, why are you not like me? You know, why don't you think like me? Don't you see that the other side are the evil? They're destroying this country, and now they don't communicate even between parents and kids. That's one of the most tragic situations, right? And my story is based on my son helping, or you know, just pushing my own biases to a level that I didn't even realize I had, because I thought I was very progressive, and you know, I vote for minorities and women's rights, and I go protest for women's rights, and I go protest for Black Lives Matter, stuff like that. But I still had that something was off, you know, and so it helps me to go there, not avoid it, go there and find that love beyond the color of the skin, beyond their religion, beyond their politics, beyond, just look at that person, look at their feelings, their dreams, their hopes, their values.
Well, that's what I mean, because it's like, even if somebody was in a dangerous, you could look at it from so many different ways. It's like, love is always the answer, because like, yeah, I mean, when you said that some people disagree, I was thinking of Nicole Kidman. Somebody was just talking about her yesterday, and I was like, could you imagine? Because she has a daughter with Tom Cruise, who, and I think maybe another kid, but I know for sure their daughter, and has totally disowned Nicole Kidman because she left the Church of Scientology.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
why Tom Cruise split up, because she was like, I don't like this Church of Scientology. And could you imagine, like, you have your own kid and you don't talk to them? And then on the flip side, I watched this documentary of this girl who was, you know, brought into this cult, and her mom ended up saving her, rescuing her from this cult.
Yeah.
Without love and communication. She was like, I knew if I shut down communication, was just like, oh my God, you're so different. And I mean, her daughter was like, Mom, I want nothing to do. But she stayed with the love. And so then she was able to rescue her daughter. So it's both, you know what I mean? Sometimes there's nothing you can do. And I'm not saying everyone always needs rescuing, but if you don't have communication, nothing's possible.
And we go back to the storytelling. That's why the Bible is so, you know, still they're talking. Not many people read the Bible. It's the most sold book, and it's the least read book in the world, you know. So that's the truth. Nobody really reads it. They hear it from the preacher or the priest or whatever. Oh, you know, and they leave out stuff that's terrible in the Bible: genocide, drowning of millions of people, and wanting your father to kill his son. There's like, if you look at the Bible, analyze it. I don't want to spend a lot of time doing that, but people are not really reading that. The bottom line is people are not reading it. But going back to what you're saying, that communication, and this is where this stuff that we're doing is so motivating for me. It's really motivating that I don't know where this is going, but as long as I can express my views and do it in a loving way, trying to not get triggered in where I'm getting angry, breathing, a meditation, breathing, not taking things personally. And if you can communicate like that, the other person, because once the person feels your energy, like feeling attacked, and it happened in that acting class, I was surprised to say, why are you criticizing me? And I never said something. I'm questioning beliefs, but now it's about them, and so it's triggering me, it's triggering her.
And that's another really interesting conversation, actually, that you just made me think of, is like, are your beliefs a thing outside of you, or are beliefs who you are? Because you're like, I'm criticizing your beliefs, but she's like, you're criticizing me, because she identifies her beliefs are who I am. So what is that difference? Are our beliefs who we are, or are our beliefs fluid? Can beliefs change? Because what I believed when I was a teenager in some regards are different than what I believe now. So am I my beliefs? What am I?
Yeah. And why do we get attached to something that's been passed on, and you don't that critical thinking, like, that's what I believe in. Like, analyze it, what are they saying, like, and who's saying it, and what's, are they controlling? Is there something about control and the patriarchy? These usually are men that are controlling these church groups, and they're trying to control women, women's sexuality and stuff, and you can't enjoy sex. A lot of them is about that. So I appreciate how we can come up with conversations without necessarily having an agenda,
Oh, that's easy for us. We could talk all day.
Yeah, and I was watching, every once in a while, Joe Rogan with Bill Maher, and they bring this up, like, because sometimes their show is like 2 hours or 3 hours, and Bill Maher is saying, do you ever worry that you might run out of things to talk about? And Joe Rogan said, not really. He can always, it's so spontaneous, so natural. I think that's one of the things people are, and he talks, he's usually calm. Even they're talking about even rape and porn and politics and stuff, and he's usually calm. I think that's what also people are drawn to that, instead of, because that's why he can get maybe both sides. And a guy like Rush Limbaugh or the other guys, they're hate. And what's the other guy? But anyway, so
you're gonna have a heart attack. Like, you can just see their face getting red. You're right. Joe Rogan does have a good sense about it. You're right. He does do that. It's like you're just hanging out at the bar or something with him, it feels like.
Yeah, and even though he's had some controversy with vaccines and bringing some people, if he's really able to balance that, then he'll have both sides, and maybe he's part of. I still don't know if he was changing, if he was kind of taking more one side or not. Because if he tries to stay in the middle as much as possible and bring people from both sides and keep that calmness, and then he's going to be very, I wouldn't want him to be successful based on controversy. and based on hating one side, like,
No, I
again,
mean, they say that's why he's successful, I haven't been like following him religiously or anything, but like from what I've seen him show totally different perspectives. And, cause like he's had Bernie Sanders on, he's had conservatives on, like, not a lot of people do that. Like, they won't do that. And I think
yeah,
that's why he's number one, because it's like, people are hungry. People, I think in the main population are kind of sick of one or the other. It
yeah,
used to be like, we would get news that was like, we could decide, like, and then it became like Fox News versus CNN or
CNN,
yeah.
yeah.
And it's like, why? So it's interesting that he's bigger than all of them. Like, what did you say? He's bigger than CNN,
Oh,
MSNBC,
yeah,
Fox News, like
all of them
combined.
combined, yeah.
That's
And he had
crazy.
a contract for 100 million. So we're running out of time, but I wanted to say, I appreciate how the spontaneity, because I was thinking about the role playing or I don't know, why don't you like calling them skits? Well,
Kind of a joke. I mean, it's kind of a joke thing that it's just it's because I'm a serious actress and artiste. We are
what would you call? No,
Mariano.
I want to respect that, especially if you're my
No,
acting
it's kind of like
teacher.
a personal thing. It's kind of a funny thing because like, it's the thing that would happen like when family members would come to see, and it's like, you're like in a really important play or something. It's supposed to be life-changing. They're like, I like your skit. That was
Oh,
nice.
yeah.
Like, that
No,
wasn't a
but
skit. That
what
was
do you
like
call?
pouring my life out.
Okay, I totally, yeah, the hours and hours of rehearsal and sweat and sacrifice and stuff. Oh, I like your skin.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that was so cute. Your skin.
Well, go fuck yourself.
Exactly.
So, yeah, but okay, so we need to find out. I need to find the term for these little short things because that was so spontaneous.
Yeah.
It was like in your head. I couldn't even do that. Like, oh, you're going to be this wife and you're going to be the husband, and you also tie it with your friend and you tie it with
I would just
whatever.
say improvisations. They're improvisations that are more rooted in truth. So they can be dramatic, they're like we think of improvisation so often, like it has to be always funny. But no, I mean, it's what you guys did was an improvisation.
So I would like to, maybe have a little bit of a plan on that, and we can incorporate it either in this class if other people enjoy, like they can practice their scripts, they can set characters so we can do the role playing. But for me, there's some messages that we have to figure out how to do that because it's a group class, it's an open class versus maybe us setting a special FTW class where we invite actors, but it's part of our production.
That'd be fun. You know what would be really fun too? I read one time that a teacher, like during one of the big heated elections in the last 8 years, we've had so many, it feels like, but like, I forget which one it was. But a teacher had her students, I think like in middle school, write the opposing argument as if that was your view. Like,
Yes, I can't believe you said that. I was thinking like, okay, now I'm gonna pretend I'm the religious Republican.
Right. And you actually have to do a little research and like find like what makes you think. So from an acting and an exercise, that would be really interesting.
And I was doing that before even taking acting classes. Oh, let's do some role playing. They would think, what are you talking about? And yeah, now you're the man, like the woman is now the man, and I'm the woman, or you're the black guy and I'm the white guy, or I'm the black guy and you're the white guy, like reverse roles.
Yes.
I think that would be so much fun, and it might help in communication, might help in understanding the other side and finding the humanity of that. So let's, we'll follow up with that.
Because instead of just going, you think that, you have to go inside yourself and go, why would I think this if I thought that? Yeah, that would be really fun. That'd be really fun.
And yeah, and it kind of matches our our values and our mission, vision. So
Yep.
thank
All right.
you.